She left an apology note on a scratched car, promising to pay for damages no matter the cost. What she didn't know, the car belonged to a Mafia boss, and the repair bill was $85,000. But he wasn't interested in her money. He was interested in the shy teacher who showed more honesty in one note than anyone in his dangerous world ever had. Emma's hands trembled as she stared at the long, silver scratch running across the midnight blue car's door. The parking lot lamp cast harsh shadows that made the damage look even worse. "No, no, no," she whispered, her breath fogging in the cold November air. The charity gala was winding down inside the hotel, where successful businesspeople mingled over champagne. Emma had only attended because the school principal insisted all teachers show up to schmooze with potential donors. She'd spent 2 miserable hours nursing a single glass of wine in the corner, counting down the minutes until she could escape. Now this. The car she'd hit wasn't just expensive, it was a work of art. Even in the dim light, Emma could see the hand-stitched leather through the windows and the chrome details that probably cost more than her annual salary. She'd been distracted, fumbling with her phone while backing out, and hadn't seen it parked in the shadows. Her 2008 Honda Civic sat there innocently, its bumper perfectly aligned with the scene of her crime. Emma glanced toward the hotel entrance. She could just leave. No one had seen. The parking lot was nearly empty, and the valet had gone inside. But even as the thought crossed her mind, guilt twisted in her stomach. Her mother had raised her better than that. She dug through her purse, finding only a grocery receipt and a pen. On the back, she scribbled,
"I'm so sorry.
I accidentally hit your car while leaving the gala. Please contact me and I will pay for all repairs, no matter the cost. Again, I apologize deeply for my carelessness. Emma Clark, 555-0147. She tucked the note under the windshield wiper, took one last look at the damage she'd caused, and drove home with her heart hammering. 12 miles across the city, Leonardo Vitali sat in his study, reviewing security footage from his late father's shipping businesses. The numbers didn't add up, which meant someone was stealing from him. Leo had been running the family operations for only 8 months since his father's assassination, and vultures were already circling. Leo, his right-hand man, Marco, appeared in the doorway. The valet just called from the hotel. Someone hit the '61 Ferrari. Leo's jaw tightened. The Ferrari 250 GT California Spider wasn't just a car, it had been his father's favorite, one of only 55 ever made. Leo had driven it tonight as a message to the other families. The Vitales were still strong, still untouchable. Apparently not untouchable enough to avoid parking lot accidents. How bad? Long scratch on the driver's side. The valet found a note. Leo held out his hand, and Marco passed him a crumpled grocery receipt. As he read the careful handwriting, his expression shifted from irritation to surprise. "Emma Clark," he murmured, then looked up sharply. "Check the name?" Marco was already typing on his phone. 30 seconds later, he read, "Emma Clark, 27, elementary school teacher at Riverside Elementary. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Lives alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in," he paused, his eyes widening. "Leo, that's Nico's school. That's his teacher." Leo leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. 8-year-old Nico had been struggling since their father's death. He'd stopped talking to most adults, threw tantrums, and refused to do his homework. The family therapist said he was processing trauma. Then, 3 months ago, Nico was assigned to Miss Clark's 3rd-grade class. The change had been remarkable. Nico started bringing home drawings and stories. He'd excitedly tell Leo about science experiments and the books Miss Clark read aloud. Last week, he'd even made a friend. When Leo attended the parent-teacher conference, he'd seen why. Miss Clark had been kind but honest, telling him that Nico was bright but hurting. She'd looked Leo straight in the eye, which few people dared to do, and promised she wouldn't give up on his brother. Leo had left that meeting thinking about her for days afterward. The way she'd nervously tucked her hair behind her ear. How her voice had been soft but steady when discussing Nico's needs. the genuine care in her eyes. And now she'd hit his car and left a note promising to pay no matter the cost.
Boss.
Marco asked carefully. Want me to contact her in the morning? Leo studied the note again, tracing the apologetic words with his thumb. Most people who wronged him either ran or lied. Emma Clark had done something almost no one in his world ever did. She'd taken responsibility and asked to make it right. No, Leo said quietly. I'll handle this personally. Marco's eyebrows rose. Personally? It's just a scratch. She's Nico's teacher, Leo stood, tucking the note into his jacket pocket. And I'm curious about someone honest enough to leave a note, but nervous enough to write it on a grocery receipt. You're not going to scare her. Leo's smile turned cold. Of course not. Miss Clark is important to my brother. But I think she and I should have a conversation about responsibility, consequences. He paused at the window, looking out over the glittering city. And just how much that scratch is going to cost her.
Marcos shifted uncomfortably.
The repair estimate came back. $85,000. Original 1961 paint. Then I suppose, Leo said softly, Miss Emma Clark is about to learn that honesty comes with a very expensive price tag. He picked up his phone, already planning tomorrow's meeting. He wouldn't frighten her. Nico would never forgive him. But he would enjoy watching the shy teacher who'd avoided eye contact during their conference try to explain how she'd managed to hit the rarest car in the parking lot. And maybe, just maybe, he'd finally understand why he couldn't stop thinking about her. Outside, the city glittered with secrets and lies. But somewhere in a modest apartment, an honest woman was probably lying awake, worrying about a debt she couldn't possibly pay. Leo almost felt guilty about what he was planning. Almost. Emma had barely slept. She'd spent half the night researching vintage cars, and the other half calculating how many years it would take to pay off the repairs on her teacher's salary. The numbers weren't encouraging. She arrived at Riverside Elementary at 7:30, earlier than usual, hoping the routine of preparing her classroom would calm her nerves. It didn't. Every time she arranged the reading corner or wrote the day's math problems on the board, her mind drifted back to that beautiful blue car and the damage she'd caused. By 8:15, her students started trickling in. Nico Vitali was among the first, his dark eyes brightening when he saw her. Miss Clark, guess what? Leo said he might come to the fall festival next week. Emma's smile felt strained. That's wonderful, Nico. She didn't mention that she'd probably be served with a lawsuit before the festival even happened. The morning crawled by. Emma taught fractions and vocabulary words on autopilot, her stomach churning with anxiety. During recess, she checked her phone obsessively, expecting a call from a lawyer or an angry car owner. Nothing. Maybe they hadn't found the note yet. Maybe. Miss Clark, the school secretary, Mrs. Patterson, appeared in her doorway, looking flustered. There are two gentlemen here to see you. They're waiting in the main office. Emma's blood turned cold. Did they say what they wanted? No, but Mrs. Patterson lowered her voice. They're wearing very expensive suits, dear. And they're very polite but very insistent. This was it. Emma smoothed down her cardigan with shaking hands and followed Mrs. Patterson down the hallway. Through the office window, she could see two men standing near the principal's desk. Both wore dark suits that probably cost more than her car. One was older, with silver at his temples. The other was younger, built like he spent his free time breaking things. They looked like they'd stepped out of a crime movie. Miss Clark, the older one, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My name is Marco.
This is my associate, Dante.
We're here on behalf of Mr. Vitali. He'd like to speak with you. Emma's voice cracked. I left a note. I promised to pay for everything. We're aware, Marco said smoothly. Mr. Vitali would prefer to discuss the matter in person. If you'll come with us, please. Right now. Emma glanced back at her classroom. I have students. Already arranged, the principal, Mr. Henderson, appeared from his office, looking nervous and eager to please. I'll cover your class, Emma. These gentlemen have assured me you'll be back within the hour. Emma wanted to argue, to insist this was inappropriate, but the way Marco stood, patient, immovable, made it clear she didn't actually have a choice. "Fine," she whispered. "Let me get my things." The walk to the parking lot felt surreal. A sleek black Mercedes waited at the curb, looking as out of place at the elementary school as the two men flanking her. Marco opened the rear door, gesturing for her to enter. Emma slid inside, her heart pounding. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Dante climbed into the driver's seat while Marco sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Mr. Vitali's residence. It's a 15-minute drive." "Is he going to sue me?" Marco's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Vitali simply wants to talk, Miss Clark. You're not in any danger." But Emma noticed Dante watching her in the rearview mirror, and she didn't feel reassured. They drove through increasingly upscale neighborhoods until the Mercedes turned onto a private road lined with iron gates and stone walls. At the end stood a villa that looked like it belonged on the Italian coast, all cream stone and terracotta tiles, surrounded by manicured gardens. Emma's stomach dropped. Whoever owned that car wasn't just wealthy, they were obscenely rich. Marco led her through a marble foyer and into a study filled with dark wood and leather furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. And standing by those windows, silhouetted against the morning light, was a man Emma recognized immediately. Leonardo Vitali turned, and his dark eyes met hers. He was Nico's older brother, the one who'd attended the parent-teacher conference last month. Emma remembered him clearly, tall, impeccably dressed, with a face that belonged on a movie screen and an intensity that had made her nervous. She'd stumbled over her words during their entire meeting. "Miss Clark," his voice was smooth, cultured, and far too calm for someone whose car she destroyed. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't really have a choice," Emma blurted out, then immediately regretted it. But Leo's lips curved into an almost smile. "No, I suppose you didn't.
Please sit.
We have much to discuss about your
accident."
He gestured to a chair opposite his desk, and Emma sat, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Except principals didn't have armed guards or villas that could house 50 people. "Mr. Vitali," Emma began, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I'm truly sorry about your car. I'll pay for the repairs. I just need to set up a payment plan." $85,000, Leo interrupted softly. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Emma's world tilted. What? The damage estimate. $85,000. Leo sat on the edge of his desk, studying her with unsettling focus. "Tell me, Miss Clark, how exactly did you plan to pay for that?" Emma couldn't breathe. $85,000. She'd expected the repairs to be expensive, maybe even $10,000, but this was impossible. This was her entire savings, 2 years of salary, her future crumbling into dust. She gripped the arms of the chair. "I'll get a loan. Or I can set up a payment plan. I'll pay you back, I promise, even if it takes years." Leo watched her with an expression she couldn't read. "How much do you make annually, Miss Clark?" "I don't see how that's." "Humor me." Emma's cheeks burned. $42,000 before taxes. "So after taxes, rent, food, utilities," Leo tilted his head. "You're offering to spend the next decade paying me back for a scratch on a car?" "Yes," Emma lifted her chin, even as tears threatened. "I damaged your property. I take responsibility for that." Something flickered across Leo's face. Surprise, maybe, or something softer. He was quiet for a long moment, then pushed off the desk and walked to the window. "My brother talks about you constantly," he said, his back to her. "Miss Clark lets us do science experiments. Miss Clark helped me with my reading. Miss Clark says I'm smart." He turned, and his expression was gentler than before. "Do you know what you've done for Nico?" Emma blinked at the sudden shift. "I'm just doing my job." "No," Leo's voice was firm. "You're doing more than that. Nico was drowning before your class. Angry, isolated, falling behind. You reached him when no one else could, including me." He moved closer, and Emma's heart hammered. So let me be very clear, Miss Clark. I'm not taking your money.
What?
Emma stood abruptly. But the car is insured. And frankly, I have 17 other vehicles. Leo crossed his arms. What I don't have is someone who cares about my brother the way you do. That's worth more than $85,000. Emma stared at him, confused and suspicious. I don't understand. You sent men to my school. You brought me here. Why would you do all this if you're just going to forgive the debt? Because I wanted to meet the woman honest enough to leave a note, but panicked enough to write it on a grocery receipt. A hint of amusement touched his lips. And I wasn't disappointed. This doesn't make sense, Emma said, frustration overtaking her fear. People don't just forgive debts like that. What do you want from me? The question hung between them, loaded with implications Emma hadn't intended. Leo's eyes darkened, and for a moment, something dangerous flickered there, something that made her acutely aware they were alone in this massive house. Then he stepped back, giving her space. Nothing, Miss Clark. I want nothing from you except that you continue being Nico's teacher. His voice was measured, controlled. Consider the debt settled. No, the word surprised them both. Emma clenched her fists. I won't be in someone's debt, especially not someone I don't know. There has to be something. Why? Leo interrupted, genuinely curious now. Why can't you accept this? Because nothing's free. Emma's voice rose. Everyone wants something. And I don't know you, Mr. Vitali. I don't know why you live in a villa, or why you have guards, or why your 8-year-old brother is driven to school in an armored car. She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. Leo's expression shuddered completely. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. My brother is driven in an armored car because our father was murdered in front of us 9 months ago. Is that enough explanation for you? Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. I'm so sorry. Nico never said. Nico doesn't talk about it. Leo turned away, his shoulders rigid. To anyone. Except apparently in the stories he writes for your class about superheroes who save their dads. The pain in his voice made Emma's chest ache. She'd read those stories, seen the recurring theme of loss and rescue, but hadn't connected them to reality. How could she have been so blind? Mr. Vitali. Leo, he corrected quietly. And you should go. Marco will drive you back to school. But Emma didn't move. She thought about Nico's bright smile that morning, about the way he'd mentioned his brother coming to the festival, about this man who was clearly carrying the weight of his family's tragedy while trying to protect an 8-year-old from a dangerous world. I'm sorry, she said softly, for what happened to your father, and for being insensitive just now. Leo looked at her, and some of the ice in his expression melted. You're the first person in months to apologize without wanting something in return. I still want to make this right, Emma insisted. The car is fine. But if you insist on payment, Leo's lips curved slightly. Nico mentioned your classroom needs new books. Let me donate them. That's not. It would make Nico happy. And it would ease your conscience. Leo moved toward the door. Do we have a deal, Miss Clark? Emma wanted to argue more, but she could see the exhaustion beneath his composed exterior. This man was fighting battles she couldn't imagine, and somehow, she'd stumbled into his life at the worst possible moment. Deal, she finally said. But I'm keeping track of every penny. Leo's laugh was unexpected and genuine. I'd expect nothing less. 3 blocks from the Vitali villa, a gray sedan sat parked beneath a maple tree, its occupants watching through tinted windows. Who is she? The passenger asked, snapping photos as Emma emerged from the house with Marco. The driver, a wiry man named Victor, zoomed in on Emma's face.
No idea.
But she was in there for 20 minutes. That's not a social call. Could be a courier. Or a lawyer. Dressed like a librarian? Victor watched the Mercedes pull away with Emma inside.
No.
This is something else. Run her plates when she goes back to her car. The passenger made a note. You think Vitali's making new connections? After what we did to his old man. He'd be stupid not to. Victor started the engine. Boss needs to know about this. If Leo's bringing in outside players, We need to know who they are before they become a problem. They followed at a distance, watching as the Mercedes returned Emma to Riverside Elementary. When she climbed out and hurried back inside, both men noticed how she glanced nervously over her shoulder. "She's scared," the passenger observed.
Good.
Scared people make mistakes. Victor pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Dimitri. He'll want surveillance on her, full background, routine weaknesses." For one woman. Victor's smile was cold. The Vitales lost their father. Now Leo's got that kid brother to worry about. You know what that means? Leverage.
Exactly.
And if this woman matters to Leo, then she matters to us. Back at the villa, Leo stood in his study, staring at the spot where Emma had sat. Her defiance had surprised him. Most people crumbled under pressure or scrambled to please him. Emma had done neither. She'd challenged him, insisted on responsibility, and called him out when he'd been cold.
It was
refreshing. Dangerously so. Boss Marco entered, closing the door behind him. "We have a problem." Leo's moment of distraction evaporated. "What kind?" "Dimitri's crew. 2 of them were parked down the street when we brought Miss Clark in." Marco pulled up security footage on his tablet. "They followed us back to the school. They're watching her." Leo's blood turned cold. Dmitry Morozov ran the Russian syndicate that had been encroaching on Vitali territory for months. They were the primary suspects in his father's assassination, though Leo hadn't been able to prove it yet. The 2 families were locked in a silent war. No open violence, just strategic moves and counter-moves.
Until now.
"They think she's connected to our operations," Leo said quietly. "Has to be. Why else bring a civilian to the villa in broad daylight?" Marco's tone was respectful but pointed. "With respect, boss, you exposed her." Leo's jaw clenched.
Marco was right.
He'd been so focused on meeting Emma, on understanding the woman who'd left that note, that he hadn't considered how it would look to their enemies. A strange woman brought to the Vitali home in the middle of a turf war? Of course Dimitri's people would assume she was significant. How much danger is she in? Depends on what they think she knows. Marco hesitated. If they believe she's a courier or informant, they'll try to grab her for interrogation. If they think she's just leverage. He didn't need to finish. Leo knew exactly what happened to leverage in their world. "Put a protection detail on her immediately," Leo ordered. "Rotating shifts, discreet distance. She doesn't notice them unless there's a threat." "Already done. I sent Tony and Luca. They're parked near the school now." Marco paused. "But boss, she's going to notice eventually. And when she does, she'll have questions. Then we'll deal with it when it happens." Leo moved to his desk, pulling up maps of the city on his computer. "What about Nico? His security is tight. We doubled the detail after your father died. Triple it. If Dimitri knows about Miss Clark, he might reconsider Nico as a target." The thought made Leo's vision blur with rage. Nico was supposed to be off-limits, an unspoken rule even among criminals. But Dmitry Morozov had never cared much for rules. "You could tell her," Marco suggested carefully. "Explain the situation. And say what? Sorry, Miss Clark, but by bringing you to my house, I've painted a target on your back." Leo's laugh was bitter. She'd panic.
Quit her job.
Disappear. And Nico would lose the one stable thing in his life. So we just watch her? Hope Dimitri's crew doesn't make a move. We watch her, we protect her, and we figure out what Dimitri's planning before he acts. Leo's voice hardened. And if anyone lays a hand on her, we make it very clear what happens when you threaten someone under Vitali protection. Marco nodded, recognizing the shift in Leo's tone. He'd seen that look before, the cold calculation that preceded violence. "I'll inform the team. What about Miss Clark's apartment? Security cameras on her building, front and back. I want to know everyone who comes within 50 feet of her door." Leo pulled up Emma's file on his screen. The background check Marco had run that morning. "And get me everything on her routine. Where she shops, what route she takes home, where she goes on weekends." "Boss, that's necessary." Leo cut him off. "Dimitri's people are already watching her. I need to know everything they know, plus more." Marco left to make the arrangements, and Leo sat alone with Emma's information glowing on his screen. Her life was so simple, so normal. Morning coffee at the same cafe, 3 times a week. Grocery shopping on Sunday afternoons. Friday movie nights with someone named Sarah, probably a friend. No family nearby.
No boyfriend.
No one who'd notice if she disappeared. Leo's hands curled into fists. He'd made a massive error in judgment, and Emma Clark was going to pay the price unless he fixed this quickly. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Interesting visitor you had this morning. Cher. Dimitri. The bastard was taunting him already. Leo typed back, "Stay away from her. She's nobody." The response came immediately. "Then you won't mind if we ask her ourselves." Leo threw the phone across the room, where it shattered against the wall. Emma spent the rest of the day in a fog. Her students completed their math worksheets while she stared at the whiteboard, replaying the morning's events. Leo's cold revelation about his father's murder. The way his voice had softened when he talked about Nico. That unsettling moment when he looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. And underneath it all, a nagging feeling that she'd stumbled into something far more complicated than a scratched car. By the time the final bell rang, Emma's head was pounding. She walked her students to the pickup area, scanning the line of waiting parents and cars. Nico bounced toward a black SUV where a stern-faced driver waited. "Bye, Miss Clark," he called, waving enthusiastically. Emma waved back, then froze. 2 cars behind the SUV sat a gray sedan with tinted windows. She'd seen that same car this morning when Marco had driven her back to school. And now it was here again, idling at the curb. Coincidence, she told herself. Lots of gray sedans in the city. But when she walked to her own car 20 minutes later, she noticed another unfamiliar vehicle, a dark blue Camry, parked across the street. 2 men sat inside, one drinking coffee, both watching the school entrance. Emma's hands trembled as she unlocked her Honda. She was being paranoid. This was what happened when rich people with armed guards pulled you out of work for mysterious meetings. She drove home, checking her rearview mirror obsessively. No one followed her. By the time she reached her apartment building, she'd almost convinced herself she was overreacting. The next morning, Emma arrived early again, hoping routine would restore her sense of normalcy. It didn't. The blue Camry was parked down the block, same 2 men inside. During lunch, her friend Sarah cornered her in the teacher's lounge.
Okay, spill.
What happened yesterday? Henderson said you had an urgent meeting with men in suits. Emma debated lying, but Sarah had known her since college. She'd see through it immediately. "I accidentally scratched someone's car at the gala. They wanted to discuss payment, and it required pulling you out of school with bodyguards." "They weren't bodyguards," Emma protested weakly. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I saw them. They looked like they ate nails for breakfast." "Whose car did you hit?" "Just someone wealthy. It's handled now." "Wealthy how? Like Dr. Wealthy or Crime Lord Wealthy?" Emma's silence was answer enough. Sarah's eyes widened. "Oh my God. Emma Clark, what did you do?" Before Emma could respond, the classroom phone rang. The secretary's voice crackled through. "Miss Clark? There's a delivery for you. Main office." Emma exchanged a glance with Sarah and headed downstairs. In the office, she found 3 large boxes stacked near the desk, and standing beside them, impeccably dressed as always, was Leo. Her stomach flipped. "Mr. Vitali," she managed. "What are you doing here?" Fulfilling our agreement, he gestured to the boxes. "New books for your classroom." Nico helped pick them out. Emma stared at the boxes, then at Leo, completely off balance. "You didn't have to deliver them yourself." "I wanted to," his eyes held hers. "And I wanted to ask if you'd join Nico and me for coffee this weekend. There's a fundraiser planning meeting and Nico insists you should be there." It wasn't really a question. And Emma noticed several staff members watching through the office window, including Mr. Henderson, who looked starstruck. "I don't think." "Please, Miss Clark," Leo's voice dropped lower. "It would mean a lot to Nico." He talks about you constantly, and I'd like to discuss his progress in a less formal setting than parent-teacher conferences. The way he said it sounded reasonable, normal even. But Emma caught something else in his expression. Urgency, maybe. Or warning. Saturday afternoon, she heard herself say. Perfect. There's a cafe on Maple Street. Giovanna's. 2:00. When she nodded, Leo's shoulders relaxed slightly. Thank you. Nico will be thrilled. He left as smoothly as he'd arrived, and Emma was surrounded by curious teachers within seconds. Who was that? Sarah demanded. Nico Vitali's brother, Emma said faintly, watching through the window as Leo climbed into a waiting Mercedes. He donated books. That man could donate a cardboard box and I'd thank him, another teacher muttered. But Emma barely heard her. She was watching the gray sedan from yesterday pull away from the curb, following Leo's car at a careful distance. That evening, Emma's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Clark? Leo's voice, more serious than before. I need you to listen carefully. You may have noticed some unfamiliar cars near your school. Emma's blood chilled. The gray sedan. And the blue Camry. They're mine, Leo said, and relief flooded through her. Protection detail. Just a precaution. Protection from what? Silence stretched between them. When Leo finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Let's discuss it Saturday. At Giovanna's. Please don't worry, you're perfectly safe. I just wanted you to know those men are there to help, not harm. Leo, what's going on? Saturday, he repeated firmly. 2:00. And Emma? Until then, stick to your usual routine. Don't deviate. Don't take shortcuts. And if anything feels wrong, you call this number immediately. Understood. Emma's hand tightened on the phone. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry, he paused. But I need you to trust me until Saturday. Can you do that? Every instinct screamed at her to demand answers now, to hang up and block his number, to run from whatever this was. But she thought of Nico's smile, of Leo's carefully controlled grief when he'd mentioned his father. Okay, she whispered. Saturday. After he hung up, Emma sat on her couch, staring at her phone. Protection detail. Precautions. Don't deviate from your routine. What had she gotten herself into? Saturday arrived wrapped in autumn sunshine and Emma's escalating anxiety. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a soft gray sweater, casual enough not to look like she was trying too hard, professional enough to maintain boundaries. Because boundaries were important. Leo Vitali was Nico's guardian, nothing more. The fact that she'd spent the past 3 nights dreaming about his dark eyes and the dangerous edge in his voice meant nothing. Giovanna's was a small Italian cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Emma arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a cappuccino, choosing a table near the window where she could watch the street. Sure enough, the blue Camry was parked 2 blocks down. Protection detail. The phrase still sent chills down her spine. Miss Clark. Nico burst through the cafe door, Leo following at a more measured pace. The boy threw his arms around Emma's waist, and she couldn't help but laugh. Hey, Nico. Excited about the fundraiser? Leo says we can have a bake sale. And I told him you make the best cookies, so you have to help. Nico pulled back, his dark eyes, so like his brother's, shining with enthusiasm. Did you now? Emma glanced at Leo, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. He's very persuasive, Leo said, pulling out a chair for Nico. Coffee. I have one, thanks. Leo ordered an espresso and hot chocolate for Nico, then sat across from Emma. In the warm cafe light, he looked less intimidating than he had in his study. His charcoal sweater was casually elegant, and without the backdrop of that massive villa, he seemed almost normal. Almost. So, Emma said, desperate to fill the silence. The fall festival. What exactly are we planning? For the next 20 minutes, they discussed carnival games, volunteer schedules, and whether the dunk tank was age-appropriate for 3rd graders. Nico chattered excitedly, and Leo listened with an attention that surprised Emma. He didn't just nod absently. He asked questions, remembered details, and even smiled at Nico's more outlandish suggestions. What if we had a superhero theme? Nico suggested. Everyone could dress up. That's a great idea, Emma said warmly. We could have the kids vote on it. See, Leo? Miss Clark gets it, Nico grinned triumphantly. Miss Clark gets a lot of things, Leo murmured, his gaze lingering on Emma in a way that made her pulse quicken. When Nico excused himself to the bathroom, the easy atmosphere shifted. Leo's expression grew serious. I owe you an explanation, he began. Yes, you do, Emma kept her voice steady. Why do I need protection? Because I made a mistake, Leo's honesty caught her off guard. When I brought you to my home, people who watched me assumed you were important to my business interests. They've been surveilling you to determine what you know. What I know about what? Things I can't discuss, Leo's jaw tightened. My family has complicated relationships with other families in this city. When you appeared at my home, those other families became curious. Emma's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. You're talking about organized crime? Leo didn't flinch. I'm talking about protecting my brother and anyone associated with us. Right now, that includes you. This is insane, Emma pushed back from the table. I scratched your car. That's all. I'm not associated with anything. They don't know that. Leo's voice was low, urgent. All they know is you spent 20 minutes alone with me. In their world, that means something. Then tell them the truth. You think they'd believe it? Leo leaned forward. A schoolteacher damages a $4 million Ferrari, leaves a note, and I just forgive the debt? That raises more questions than it answers. Emma stared at him, reality crystallizing with horrifying clarity. You should have taken my money. You should have sued me, made it official, made it clear I was just someone who hit your car. You're right, the admission seemed to cost him. But I didn't want your money, Emma. I wanted. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. It doesn't matter what I wanted. What matters is keeping you safe until this blows over. Until what blows over? How long are we talking about? A few weeks. Maybe less. Leo glanced toward the bathroom, checking for Nico. The men watching you are mine. They're good, and they'll keep their distance. Just maintain your routine, don't go anywhere unusual, and live like I'm in witness protection, because you wanted to what? Have coffee with your brother's teacher? Emma's voice rose slightly. This is insane, Leo. I know. His eyes held hers, and she saw genuine regret there. If I could undo it, I would. But I can't, so I'm doing the next best thing, making sure nothing happens to you. Nico returned, oblivious to the tension. What did I miss? Nothing, buddy. Leo's transformation was immediate, the dangerous man disappearing behind the attentive brother. Miss Clark was just agreeing to help with the bake sale. Emma wanted to argue, to stand up and walk away from this madness. But Nico was looking at her with such hope, and Leo's expression held a silent plea. Of course, she said weakly. I'd love to help. Nico beamed, and Leo's shoulders relaxed fractionally. They spent another hour discussing the festival, and gradually, Emma felt herself relax despite everything. Leo told stories about Nico's antics that made her laugh. Nico showed her his latest drawings. And when Leo's hand accidentally brushed hers while reaching for the sugar, electricity shot up her arm. He felt it too. She could tell by the way his eyes darkened, by the pause before he pulled back. This was dangerous. Not just the surveillance and the protection detail, but the way Leo looked at her when Nico wasn't watching. The way her heart raced when he smiled. The growing sense that she was falling into something she couldn't control. When they finally left the cafe, Leo walked them to her car. Thank you for coming. It meant a lot to Nico. Just Nico. The words slipped out before Emma could stop them. Leo's smile was slow, genuine, and devastating.
No.
Not just Nico. Then he opened her car door, and Emma drove home with her thoughts in chaos and the blue Camry following 3 cars behind. The following Tuesday, Emma stayed late to prepare for parent-teacher conferences. The autumn sun had already set by the time she locked her classroom and headed toward the parking lot. Most of the staff had left hours ago, and the building felt eerily quiet. She was halfway across the lot when she noticed the blue Camry wasn't in its usual spot. Emma paused, keys in hand, scanning the street. No sign of Leo's protection detail anywhere. Maybe they'd switched vehicles? Or maybe they'd decided she didn't need watching anymore. The thought should have been relieving. Instead, it made her nervous. She'd just unlocked her Honda when footsteps crunched behind her. Emma spun around to find two men approaching, neither of them from the Camry. One was tall and lean with a shaved head. The other was stocky, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Emma Clark, the tall one asked, his accent thick. Russian, maybe. Every instinct screamed danger. Can I help you? Yes, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We have questions about your relationship with Leonardo Vitali. I don't have a relationship with anyone. I'm just a teacher. Emma's hand tightened on her keys, trying to remember the self-defense moves from that seminar she'd taken in college. Please leave me alone. We just want to talk. The stocky one moved to her right, cutting off her angle to the school. Won't take long. I'll scream, Emma warned, her voice shaking. No one's here to hear you, the tall man said, reaching for her arm. Emma did scream, loud and piercing, as she twisted away. But his grip was iron-strong, pulling her toward a van that had appeared at the parking lot entrance. She hadn't even heard it arrive. Stop fighting, the stocky man growled, grabbing her other arm. Make this easy. Emma drove her heel into his instep and swung her keys at the tall man's face. She didn't make contact, but the surprise bought her a second. She screamed again, thrashing wildly as they dragged her toward the van. Then everything exploded into motion. Two men in dark jackets materialized from behind the building. One slammed into the tall man with enough force to send them both crashing to the pavement. The other grabbed the stocky man and yanked him away from Emma so violently she heard something crack. Get in your car. One of Leo's men, Tony, she remembered, shouted at her. Lock the doors. Emma didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled into her Honda, punched the lock button, and sat there shaking as the scene unfolded outside her windshield like something from an action movie. Leo's men were efficient and brutal. Within 2 minutes, both attackers were on the ground, restrained. The van screeched away, apparently unwilling to risk its occupants. Tony approached her window, and Emma cracked it open. Are you hurt? He asked urgently.
No.
I don't. What just happened? We need to get you somewhere safe. Now, Tony pulled out his phone. I'm calling the boss. Where were you? Emma's shock was giving way to fury. You're supposed to be watching me. Someone slashed our tires 20 minutes ago. We were delayed getting back. Tony's jaw clenched. It was coordinated. The full weight of what had almost happened hit Emma like a freight train. They'd been planning to take her, to hurt her, because of Leo. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Within 15 minutes, Leo's Mercedes screeched into the parking lot. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. But when he reached Emma's door and she unlocked it, his expression transformed into something raw and terrified. Emma, he crouched beside her car, his hands hovering like he wanted to touch her, but didn't dare. Are you hurt? Did they?
Ai fine.
Your men stopped them. Emma's voice sounded distant to her own ears. They wanted to talk about you. About why I was at your house. Leo's hands curled into fists. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. All of it. Yes, it is. Emma surprised herself with her anger. You said I'd be safe. You said they were just watching. I was wrong. The admissions seemed to cost him everything. They escalated faster than I anticipated. But I swear to you, Emma, this won't happen again. How can you promise that? Because you're not going home tonight. You're coming with me to a secure location until I eliminate this threat. Leo's tone left no room for argument. Tony, Luca, sweep her apartment. Pack essentials. We move now. Wait. Emma started to protest. No, Leo's eyes blazed. They tried to take you tonight. They'll try again. I won't risk your life because you're too stubborn to accept help. I'm not stubborn, Emma's voice broke.
I'm terrified, Leo.
I don't know what's happening or why these people want to hurt me. Leo's expression softened. He reached into the car, and this time Emma let him take her hand. His palm was warm, steady. I know you're scared, and you have every right to be angry with me. But right now, I need you to trust me one more time. His thumb traced her knuckles. Please, Emma. Let me protect you. Emma looked at his face, at the fear and guilt, and something else she couldn't quite name. She thought about those men dragging her toward the van, about the violence in Leo's world that had suddenly become her reality. She had two choices: go home and hope they didn't come back, or trust the man who'd brought this danger into her life in the first place. Where would we go? She whispered.
A penthouse I own downtown.
Secure building, private elevator, security on every floor. Leo squeezed her hand gently. You'll have your own space. Nico will be there. He'll be happy to see you. The mention of Nico decided it. If Emma went home and something happened, if these men came back and she wasn't prepared, Nico would lose another person he cared about. Okay, Emma said finally. But just until this is over. Just until it's over, Leo agreed. He helped her out of the car, and Emma realized she was still shaking. Without thinking, Leo pulled her into his arms, and she let herself lean against him for just a moment, let herself take comfort in his solid warmth. I'll fix this, he murmured against her hair. I promise. Emma wanted to believe him. But as Tony escorted her to the Mercedes and she saw the two attackers being loaded into another vehicle, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be simple again. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking the city. Emma stood in the marble foyer, clutching her hastily packed overnight bag, and tried to process the fact that this was now her temporary prison. Miss Clark. Nico appeared from down the hallway, still in his pajamas despite it being only 8 o'clock. He crashed into her with a hug. Leo said you're staying with us. This is the best. Emma managed to smile, her earlier terror softening at his enthusiasm. Just for a little while, buddy. Your room is this way. Leo appeared, his earlier intensity replaced by careful courtesy. He led her down a hallway lined with abstract art to a spacious bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows. Bathroom through there. If you need anything. I need answers. Emma set down her bag, suddenly exhausted. Real ones, Leo. Not half-truths. Leo glanced at Nico, who was bouncing on the hallway. Nico, go brush your teeth. I'll come tuck you in soon. But now, please. Something in Leo's tone made Nico obey, without argument. Once he'd disappeared, Leo stepped into the room and closed the door halfway, close enough for privacy, open enough to remain appropriate. What do you want to know? He asked quietly. Everything. Who are these people? What do they think I know? And why? Emma's voice caught. Why would they hurt me? Leo moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the glittering cityscape. My father ran shipping operations across 3 ports. Legitimate on paper, but he also moved things that weren't declared to customs. Weapons, sometimes. Other cargo that needed to disappear. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, legs suddenly weak. When he was killed 9 months ago, control of those operations fell to me. I was 28, barely prepared, and our rivals saw weakness. Leo's reflection in the glass looked haunted. The Morozov family has been pushing into our territory ever since. They want our ports, our connections, everything we built. And they think I'm helping you somehow.
Yes.
When you came to the villa, Dmitry Morozov's men photographed you. They've been trying to figure out who you are and what you mean to me. He turned to face her. Tonight was an interrogation attempt. They'd have questioned you, realized you know nothing, and then killed me, Emma finished, her voice hollow. Possibly. Or used you as leverage against me. Leo's hands clenched. Either way, I couldn't let it happen. Emma stared at him, this man who moved weapons and spoke casually about murder, who was also gentle with his traumatized brother and donated books to classrooms. The contradictions made her head spin. You could have told me all this from the beginning, she said. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was insane and run straight to the police? Leo moved closer, crouching so they were eye level. I was trying to handle it quietly, keep you safe without dragging you deeper into my world. Obviously, that failed. So, what happens now? Now I eliminate the threat. Leo's voice turned cold, dangerous. Dimitri made a mistake tonight. He moved against someone under my protection, which means he's declared open war. I've been trying to avoid bloodshed for Nico's sake, but that consideration just ended. Emma shivered at the steel in his words. How long will I have to stay here?
A week.
Maybe less. Leo's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't what you wanted, Emma, but you'll be safe here. The building has security, cameras on every floor, and my men will be outside your door. I have school. Students who need me. Marco is arranging a substitute. You'll call in sick. When Emma started to protest, Leo held up a hand. I know it's not ideal, but your safety is more important than perfect attendance records. Emma wanted to argue, to insist she couldn't just disappear from her life. But the memory of those men's hands on her arms, the fear in their eyes when Leo's team had appeared, it was too fresh, too real. Okay, she whispered. 1 week. Leo stood, relief evident in his features. Thank you for trusting me. I don't, Emma said bluntly. But I don't have better options right now. Something flickered across Leo's face. Hurt, maybe, or respect. Fair enough.
Try to get some rest.
Tomorrow we'll establish a routine, so you don't go stir-crazy. He moved toward the door, then paused. Emma? For what it's worth, I really am sorry. You deserved better than to be dragged into this. After he left, Emma sat in the silent luxury of her temporary room and finally let herself cry, for her lost sense of safety, for the simple life that had shattered the moment she'd hit that Ferrari, for the impossible situation she now found herself in. Through the walls, she heard Leo's voice reading Nico a bedtime story, and despite everything, the sound was oddly comforting. 3 floors below, in the building's security office, Tony reviewed the evening's footage while speaking into his phone. Boss wants full lockdown, he told his team. No one in or out without clearance. And someone find out how Dimitri's men knew exactly when to strike. On the monitor, Leo entered his own bedroom and stood at the window for a long moment, his shoulders tight with tension. Tony had worked for the Vitali family for 12 years. He'd seen Leo grow from an arrogant teenager into a calculating leader. But he'd never seen him look the way he had tonight when he'd arrived at that parking lot, terrified and desperate in a way that had nothing to do with business strategy. The teacher wasn't just a complication anymore. She was something far more dangerous. She was becoming important. And in their world, Tony knew, important things were always the first to be destroyed. He picked up his phone and made another call. We need more men. Double shifts. The boss is willing to go to war over this one, which means we'd better make damn sure she stays alive. Outside the tower, the city glittered with 1,000 lights, hiding 1,000 secrets. And somewhere in the darkness, Dmitri Morozov was planning his next move. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. The attack, Leo's revelations, the penthouse. She found Leo and Nico in the kitchen. Nico was eating cereal while Leo read something on his tablet, his expression grim. Morning, Emma said awkwardly. Miss Clark. Nico brightened immediately. Leo made pancakes. Want some? I'd love some. Emma slid onto a bar stool, acutely aware of Leo's eyes on her. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking far too put together for someone who'd probably been up half the night planning a mob war. He poured her coffee without asking, somehow knowing she took it black. How did you sleep? Better than expected, Emma accepted the mug, grateful for something to do with her hands. What happens today? Nico has online classes in the study. I have some business to handle. Leo's tone was carefully neutral. You're free to use the library, the gym, whatever you need. Just stay inside the penthouse. So, I'm a prisoner with nice amenities. You're a guest with security concerns, Leo corrected, but there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. After Nico disappeared to his lessons, Emma wandered the penthouse, too restless to settle. The library was impressive, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with everything from classics to modern thrillers. She tried to read but couldn't concentrate. Around noon, Leo emerged from his office for a phone call, pacing the living room. Emma pretended to browse books while eavesdropping shamelessly. I don't care what he's offering, Leo said coldly. After last night, there's no negotiation.
No, Marco.
Tell him the meeting is off unless he hands over everyone involved in the parking lot incident. That's his problem, not mine. Emma's ears perked up. The parking lot incident, her attack. Leo ended the call and noticed her watching.
Saudi.
I should take these elsewhere. It's fine. It's your home, Emma hesitated. Was that about last night? Dimitri wants to negotiate. Claims the attack was unauthorized, done by overzealous subordinates. Leo's laugh was bitter. As if I believe that. Do you think he's lying? I know he is. Dimitri doesn't breathe without calculating the benefit. Leo moved to the window, his usual position when stressed. But he's offering me something I want. The names of everyone involved, which means he's worried. Emma joined him at the window, keeping a careful distance. Why would he be worried? Isn't he winning? He made you bring me here, disrupted my life, forced you to divert resources. You're sharper than I gave you credit for, Leo said, glancing at her with surprise. Yes, that's exactly what he accomplished. But he also made a critical error. What error? He made me choose between caution and action. I've been playing defensively since my father died, trying to protect Nico, avoid escalation. Leo's voice hardened. Last night, he forced my hand. Now I'm coming for him, and he knows he's not ready for that fight. Emma absorbed this, her teacher's mind piecing together the strategy. So, he wants to negotiate before you strike. Exactly, Leo looked at her with something like respect. You understand tactics. I manage 25 8-year-olds. Strategy is survival. Emma's attempt at levity fell flat. What will you do? Meet with him. Get the names. Then decide if he lives or dies. The casual way he said it made Emma's stomach turn. You'd kill him? If necessary, Leo met her eyes steadily. Does that horrify you? Yes, Emma said honestly. But I also understand you're trying to protect your family. It's just a lot to process. Before Leo could respond, Marco burst through the penthouse door, his face urgent. Boss, we have a situation. One of our informants just sent this. He thrust his phone at Leo, who paled as he read the screen. What is it? Emma asked. Leo's jaw clenched. Dimitri is planning something at Nico's school. This Friday, the fall festival. Emma's blood ran cold. What kind of something? The message isn't specific. Just that he's sending a team during the event. Leo's hands trembled with barely suppressed rage. He's going to use the festival as cover for an attack. There will be hundreds of children there, Emma breathed. Parents, teachers. Which is exactly why he chose it. Maximum chaos, maximum leverage. Marco looked between them. We need to cancel. No, Emma spoke before she could think better of it. If you cancel, Dimitri wins. He'll know you're afraid, and he'll just pick another target. Both men stared at her. What are you suggesting? Leo asked carefully. Emma's mind raced, connecting pieces. I'm suggesting we use it. I know that school inside and out, every entrance, every blind spot, every room that locks from the inside. If we know he's coming, we can prepare. Absolutely not, Leo said immediately. I'm not using children as bait. You're not. But you can protect them better if you know his plan. Emma turned to Marco. What exactly did the informant say? Marco glanced at Leo, who nodded reluctantly. That Dimitri's men would strike during the festival. Grab someone important to Leo in the confusion. Nico, Emma whispered. Or you, Leo said quietly. They think taking either one gives them leverage. Emma's fear crystallized into determination. This had started with her mistake, her note on that car. Now children were at risk because of it. She wouldn't let that stand. Then we make sure they can't take either of us, she said firmly. I'll help you plan. I know the school layout, the schedule, where the vulnerable points are. We can turn their attack into a trap. Leo studied her for a long moment. You're serious? Those are my students, Leo. I won't let them get caught in crossfire because I'm too scared to help. Emma lifted her chin. Use me. Use what I know. Let me do something other than hide in this tower. Something shifted in Leo's expression, surprise giving way to admiration. You're sure?
No. I'm terrified.
But I'm also the only one here who knows which storerooms have reinforced doors and which hallways have security cameras. Emma's voice steadied. Let me help protect them. Leo exchanged a glance with Marco, some unspoken communication passing between them. All right, Leo said finally. But we do this my way. You provide intel, we handle everything else. And if things go wrong, they won't, Emma interrupted. Not if we're smart about it. Leo's smile was slow and genuinely impressed. You know, Miss Clark, you're full of surprises. So I'm learning, Emma said, her heart pounding with fear and something else, something that felt dangerously like purpose. For the first time since the attack, she felt like she had some control. She just hoped it would be enough. Friday arrived too quickly. Emma stood in the school parking lot at noon, watching families stream toward the festival setup on the athletic field. Colorful booths lined the perimeter, a bouncy castle dominated one corner, and the smell of popcorn and cotton candy filled the air. Everything looked perfectly normal. But Emma knew better. Beneath her cardigan, she wore a small communication device that connected her to Leo's team. 4 of his men were positioned as parent volunteers around the festival. 2 more watched the parking lot. Leo himself was in a surveillance van 3 blocks away, monitoring camera feeds from every angle. And somewhere in this crowd, Dimitri's people were waiting. Miss Clark. Several of her students ran up, excited to show her their face paint and prize tickets. Emma smiled and chatted, trying to ignore the weight in her stomach. Nico appeared with Marco, who was playing the role of uncle for the day. The boy wore a superhero cape and a huge grin. Look, Miss Clark. They have a dunk tank. I see that. Very cool. Emma caught Marco's eye. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Everything was in position. The plan was simple. Keep Nico and Emma in sight of Leo's men at all times. If Dimitri's people made a move, they'd be intercepted immediately. Emma had identified the safest evacuation route, through the gym to the band room, which had a reinforced door and only one entrance. The festival hummed along. Emma played ring toss with students, judged a cookie contest, and tried not to jump at every sudden movement. An hour passed, then 2. Maybe the informant had been wrong. Maybe. Leo's voice crackled in her earpiece. 3 men just entered through the north gate. They matched the descriptions from the parking lot. Her blood chilled. Where? Heading toward the bouncy castle. Near Nico. Emma scanned the crowd and spotted them. The tall man with the shaved head from that night, plus 2 others she didn't recognize. They were moving with purpose, weaving through families, getting closer to where Nico was standing in line. Marco, she said quietly into her comm device.
11 o'clock.
Marco saw them immediately. He casually moved closer to Nico, one hand inside his jacket. 2 more coming from the east entrance, Leo reported, tension sharp in his voice. This is bigger than we thought. Emma's mind raced. 5 men. Too many for a subtle extraction. Which meant... It's not a kidnapping, she breathed. It's a distraction. What? Leo demanded. 5 men is too obvious. They want her team focused on Nico while... Emma spun, searching the crowd. Leo, where are the children gathering for the costume parade? The gym. Why? Because that's where they'll strike. Away from cameras, away from your men. Emma was already moving. There are over 50 kids in there right now with only 2 teachers supervising. Leo cursed. Tony, redirect to the gym. Emma, get out of there. No, Emma ran toward the gym entrance. If they're going after children, I'm not leaving. She burst through the gym doors to chaos. The costume parade was in full setup, kids in various superhero and princess outfits laughing and playing. But Emma immediately spotted what was wrong. The two supervising teachers were being quietly herded toward the equipment room by two men in maintenance uniforms. Fake maintenance uniforms. Everyone. Emma's teacher voice cut through the noise like a knife. Costume parade is moving to the band room right now. Line up quickly. The children, trained to obey that tone, immediately started organizing. But one of the fake maintenance workers turned, his hand moving to his waistband. I said now. Emma clapped her hands sharply, positioning herself between the children and the men. Last one there doesn't get candy. That got them moving. Kids streamed toward the band room, and Emma guided them, her heart hammering. She could hear shouts from outside. Leo's men had engaged Dimitri's team at the bouncy castle. Emma, we're coming. Leo's voice was tight with fear. Hold position. The last child disappeared into the band room hallway just as the two men started toward her. Emma backed up, her hand fumbling for the gym door. Then Marco appeared behind the men, along with Tony. Gentlemen, wrong school event. What happened next was violent and efficient. Emma turned away, ushering the confused children into the band room and slamming the door. She threw the deadbolt just as something heavy crashed against the gym wall outside. It's okay, she told the frightened faces staring at her. We're just playing a special game. Everyone sit down, please. Nico pushed through the crowd. Miss Clark, what's happening? Before she could answer, the door handle rattled. Emma's breath caught, but then Leo's voice came through. Emma, it's me. Open the door. She recognized his voice, but checked the peephole anyway. Leo stood there, slightly disheveled, his eyes wild. The moment she opened the door, he pulled her into a brief, fierce embrace. You were supposed to stay safe, he said against her hair. I kept them safe, Emma corrected, gesturing to the children. Leo pulled back, looking at the room full of kids staring at them. He immediately composed himself, crouching to Nico's level. Hey, buddy. You okay? Leo, why are you here? Did something bad happen? Nico's voice trembled. Just some confusion outside. Miss Clark did exactly the right thing. Leo's voice was steady, reassuring. But I think it's time for everyone to go home, don't you? Within 30 minutes, the festival was shut down with a gas leak excuse. Parents collected confused children. Emma gave statements to 3 different security team members. The 2 teachers who'd been cornered were shaken but unharmed. Dimitri's men had been subdued. Emma didn't ask what that meant, and removed before police arrived. As the sun set and the parking lot emptied, Emma sat on the gym steps, exhaustion crashing over her. Leo emerged from inside and sat beside her, careful to maintain space. You saved a lot of lives today, he said quietly. I just did what any teacher would do. Emma's hands were still shaking. Is it over? Not yet. But Dimitri made his move and failed spectacularly. He's weak now, Leo's voice hardened. Which means he's also desperate. I need to end this before he tries again. Emma looked at him. This man who moved between violence and tenderness with disturbing ease. What are you going to do? What I should have done 9 months ago, Leo stood, offering his hand. But first, let me take you and Nico somewhere safe. Emma let him pull her to her feet, and for a moment, they stood too close, his hand still holding hers. Thank you, he said softly, for being brave when you had every right to run. I couldn't let them hurt my students, Emma whispered. Even if I'm terrified of your world, Leo. Even if this, she gestured between them. Whatever this is impossible. I know, Leo said, and the sadness in his voice made her chest ache. Believe me, I know. Emma didn't return to the penthouse. Instead, Leo drove her and Nico to a different property, a modest house in a quiet suburb, the kind of place that didn't attract attention. The inside was comfortable but not lavish. Soft couches, warm lighting, a kitchen that actually looked used. Safe house, Leo explained as Nico immediately claimed the TV remote. No one knows about this place except Marco and me. You'll stay here tonight. And you? Emma asked. I have business to finish. His expression was unreadable. Marco will stay with you. He's armed, trained, and he'll keep you both safe while I handle Dimitri. Emma's stomach twisted. Handle? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, Leo said gently. He crouched in front of Nico, who was flipping through cartoon channels. Hey, buddy. I need to go out for a while. You'll stay with Marco and Miss Clark, okay? Nico's face fell. But you just got here. I know. But this is important, Leo's voice softened in a way Emma had never heard. I'm making sure what happened today never happens again. So you can go to school safely. So Miss Clark doesn't have to lock you in band rooms. Will you come back? Nico's question was small, haunted. Emma's heart cracked at the fear in those words, the fear of an 8-year-old who'd already watched his father die. I will always come back to you, Leo promised fiercely. Always. You understand me? Nico nodded, but his eyes were wet. Leo pulled him into a tight hug, and Emma had to look away from the raw love in the gesture. When Leo stood, his mask was back in place. Marco's in the kitchen. There's food in the fridge. Don't leave the house. Leo, Emma caught his arm as he moved toward the door. Be careful. Please. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. You're worried about me? Of course I am, Emma said, frustrated. Despite everything, despite the insanity of this situation, I don't want you to get hurt. Leo's hand covered hers where it rested on his arm. After tonight, this ends. You can go back to your normal life, Emma. Back to lesson plans and parent-teacher conferences and Friday movie nights with Sarah. The idea should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like loss. And if I don't want that? The words escaped before Emma could stop them. Leo went very still. What? I don't. Emma struggled to articulate the impossible thing growing in her chest. I'm terrified of your world, Leo. Of the violence and the danger. But I'm also terrified of going back to my apartment and never seeing you again. Of losing Nico. Of pretending today didn't happen. Emma? I'm not asking for anything, she continued quickly. I know this is complicated. Impossible even. But I needed you to know that before you walked out that door. For a long moment, Leo just looked at her. Then, slowly, he lifted his free hand and traced her cheekbone with his thumb. You're the most unexpected thing that's ever happened to me, he said quietly. A shy teacher who left an honest note and turned my entire world sideways. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. His smile was sad. But when this is over, when you're safe and Nico's safe, I'd very much like to find out. Then he leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, gentle, reverent, and achingly brief. I'll be back by morning, he promised, and then he was gone. The nights stretched endlessly. Emma tried to focus on Nico, making him dinner, watching movies, maintaining normalcy. But her mind kept drifting to Leo, to what handling Dimitri actually meant, to the very real possibility that he might not come back at all. Marco sat at the kitchen table, cleaning a gun with methodical precision. Emma tried not to stare. He'll be fine, Marco said without looking up. Boss has been planning this for months. Tonight just moved up the timeline. What exactly is he planning? A conversation. Marco's smile was cold. The kind that ends with Dimitri understanding that attacking teachers and children has consequences. You mean killing him? I mean ending the threat. Marco finally looked at her. You care about him, the boss. It wasn't a question. Emma sank into a chair across from him. Is that stupid? Probably, Marco said honestly. Leo's world destroys soft things. People like you don't survive here. I locked 50 children in a band room while armed men were 10 feet away, Emma pointed out. I'm stronger than I look. Marco's expression shifted to something like respect. Yeah, you are. Maybe that's why he can't stop talking about you. He talks about me. All the time. Emma would hate this. Emma would think I'm a monster. Emma deserves better. Marco's imitation was surprisingly accurate. It's exhausting, honestly. Despite everything, Emma laughed. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Where are you? You didn't show for movie night. Everything okay? Emma stared at the message, at this glimpse of her normal life. The life where the biggest crisis was choosing between romantic comedies and thrillers. Where danger meant a difficult parent conference, not armed men at school festivals. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. She texted back. Long story. I'm safe. Tell you everything soon. Around 3 a.m., Emma dozed on the couch, Nico asleep with his head on her lap. She woke to the sound of the front door opening and bolted upright, her heart racing. Leo stood in the doorway, backlit by the porch light. His shirt was rumpled, his hair disheveled, but he was whole and breathing and alive. It's done, he said quietly. Emma carefully moved Nico's head to a pillow and crossed to Leo. She didn't ask for details. Didn't want to know if there was blood on his hands or death on his conscience. She just wrapped her arms around him and held on. Leo's arms came around her immediately, crushing her against him. He was shaking from adrenaline or emotion. She couldn't tell. I thought I might not make it back, he admitted against her hair. But you did. Because I promised, Nico. And because he pulled back to look at her. Because I wanted to see you again. Needed to. Emma reached up and touched his face, this complicated, dangerous, impossible man who'd somehow become essential to her. What happens now? She whispered.
Now.
Leo's smile was exhausted but genuine. Now we figure out how a mob boss and a third-grade teacher could possibly make this work. It's insane. Completely, he agreed. I'm still terrified. So am I. Leo kissed her forehead again, then her temple, then, finally, her lips. It was soft and careful and full of promise. When they broke apart, Emma was breathless. We're really doing this? She asked. If you'll have me, Leo said. Boundaries, rules, whatever you need.
But yes.
I'd like to try. From the couch, Nico's sleepy voice interrupted. Are you guys done being mushy?
I'm hungry.
They broke apart, laughing, and Emma realized that somehow, impossibly, this felt right. Dangerous, fragile, and completely insane. But right. 2 weeks later, Emma stood in her classroom after school, arranging the new books Leo had donated. Students' thank you cards covered her desk, colorful crayon drawings of libraries and happy readers. Life had returned to something resembling normal. The fall festival incident had been explained away as a security scare. Emma had given her statement to actual police this time, carefully edited by Leo's lawyers. No one questioned the gas leak story. Dmitry Morozov had disappeared. Emma didn't ask where. She'd learned there were some things she was better off not knowing. Her phone buzzed, picking up Nico in 20. Coffee after. Emma smiled. Leo had been true to his word about boundaries. He'd moved slowly, respectfully, dinner dates with Nico present, coffee shop meetings in public places, careful kisses goodnight at her apartment door. Nothing rushed, nothing assumed. It was strange, learning to date someone whose day job involved activities she couldn't think too hard about. But Leo kept those worlds separate. With her, he was just a man trying to raise his traumatized brother and figure out if he could be something other than his father's legacy. Miss Clark? Nico bounded through the door right on schedule, Leo following behind in one of his perfectly tailored suits. Guess what? Leo says I can get a dog. Does he now? Emma raised an eyebrow at Leo, who had the grace to look sheepish. A small dog, Leo clarified. A very small, well-behaved dog. There's no such thing, Emma laughed. But I think it's wonderful, Nico. While Nico gathered his backpack, Leo moved closer to Emma, his voice low. How was your day? Good. Normal, she liked that he always asked. Liked that he genuinely cared about third-grade drama and spelling test results. Yours. 3 meetings, 2 conference calls, 1 very tedious negotiation. He didn't specify what kind of negotiation. Emma didn't ask. Coffee sounds much better. At their usual cafe, Giovanna's, where this had all begun, They settled into a comfortable booth. Nico immediately pulled out his homework, and Leo helped him sound out vocabulary words while Emma worked on next week's lesson plans. It was domestic. Simple.
Perfect.
Miss Clark, Nico said suddenly. Are you Leo's girlfriend now? Emma nearly choked on her coffee. Leo's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't intervene, just watched to see how she'd answer. Well, Emma said carefully, your brother and I are spending time together to see if we'd like to be more than friends. That means yes, Nico informed Leo sagely. Sarah says when adults talk like that, it always means yes. Who's Sarah? Leo asked, amused. Miss Clark's friend. She came to help at the classroom last week. Nico returned to his homework, completely missing the significant look Leo gave Emma. You told your friends about me? Leo asked quietly. Sarah demanded an explanation for why I disappeared for a week. Emma felt her cheeks warm. I gave her the very edited version. She thinks you're an import-export. That's not entirely inaccurate, Leo's smile was wry. And what does Sarah think about your dangerous boyfriend? That I should be careful, Emma met his eyes steadily. That you could hurt me. That this whole thing is reckless and possibly stupid. She's not wrong.
No.
But she also said that she's never seen me this happy. Emma reached across the table, lacing her fingers through Leo's. So maybe it's worth the risk. Leo brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Nico made a gagging sound, and they both laughed. Later, after dropping Nico at the villa with Marco, Leo walked Emma to her apartment. At her door, he pulled her close. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Emma's heart skipped. Leo, if that's a... Relax, he pulled out a small metal plate, the scratched panel from the Ferrari. Someone had mounted it on polished wood, turning it into an odd sort of plaque. I had them preserve it during the restoration. Emma stared at the long silver scratch, the mark that had started everything. Why? She asked. Because it reminds me that sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best things. Leo's voice was soft. That sometimes destruction creates something new. And that honesty, even when it's terrifying, is always worth it. Emma traced the scratch with her finger, emotion welling in her chest. You're such a sentimental criminal. Only for you, Leo tipped her chin up, his kiss slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I know this isn't easy, Emma. I know you're scared sometimes. I am too. Of what? Of not being good enough for you. Of my world touching yours and destroying the best thing that's ever happened to me. His thumb traced her jaw. But I'm willing to try if you are. To build something real between us, even if it's complicated. Especially because it's complicated, Emma corrected. She pulled back to look at him fully. I need you to promise me something, though. Anything. No more secrets. If something threatens me or Nico, you tell me. We face it together. Emma's voice was firm. I'm not a damsel who needs protecting from information. I'm your partner, if we're doing this. Leo studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Partners. Equal honesty, even when it's hard. Even when it's hard, Emma agreed. He kissed her again, and Emma felt the last of her reservations dissolve. This was insane. Dating a man whose father had been murdered, whose world operated in shadows, whose version of conflict resolution probably violated several laws. But it was also real. The way he looked at her like she was precious. The way he listened when she talked about her students. The way he was trying, genuinely trying, to be better than his circumstances. Stay, Emma whispered against his lips. Leo pulled back, surprise and desire warring in his expression. Emma?
Just asleep.
Just to hold me. She felt brave and reckless and completely certain. I don't want you to leave yet. Leo's smile was slow and devastating. Then I won't. Miles away, in his study at the villa, a restoration certificate lay on Leo's desk, documentation that the 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider had been returned to its original glory. But mounted on the wall above his desk was the scratched panel, catching the light like a trophy. Some things Leo had decided were too important to fix completely. Some scars were worth keeping. And some mistakes, like a shy teacher hitting his car and leaving an honest note, were really just destiny with terrible timing. He looked at the photo on his desk. Emma and Nico laughing at the fall festival, taken moments before everything had gone wrong. Moments before Emma had proven she was braver than anyone, including herself, had realized. Leo picked up his phone and texted Marco, "Clear my schedule tomorrow afternoon. I'm taking Emma and Nico to the aquarium." Marco's response was immediate. "About time you acted like a normal person." Leo smiled. Normal was relative. But with Emma, with Nico, he could almost believe in a future that wasn't defined by violence and revenge. He could almost believe in redemption. Outside, the city glittered with secrets and shadows. But inside this life he was carefully building, there was light. Fragile, dangerous, and impossibly real. But light nonetheless.